All right, so this is just a general overview of Adobe Animate CC. It's not going to be comprehensive by any means. I just kind of want to show you roughly just the interface in general, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Create New HTML5 Canvas because this is more directed towards the web design stuff, so HTML5 Canvas is good. Click on that. Voila. Right off the bat, what you can do is, let's open this up. You can click on the workspace here, and if you go to the properties, anything that you have in here, it'll give you the properties of. Okay, so if I select in here, I can change the size of it. I can change the frame rate of my stage here. I can make it so it's scaled content. So I'm just gonna go ahead and we're just gonna do 1280 by 720 because that's just a normal kind of lower end HD resolution, but it's 16 by 9, which is kind of what I wanted. Okay, so you can see that changes the size of the stage, and basically this is what anything that's inside of that space gets rendered. Okay. Now to kind of show you some stuff, what I'm going to do is bring in something into this program that I'm going to like trace and all that. Okay. Actually, we'll do that next thing. Okay, so basically first we have is the select tool, and just to give you an idea of what it does, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a shape. Okay, now this is the general selection tool. You can just hit V, but basically it lets you select the pieces. So you can see this is made of a stroke and a fill. All right, you can also grab and you can pull. See how it hovers and turns into these side pieces. All right, and then when it's a corner, it turns into this. It shows you that it's a point. Okay. So it lets you do that. It's a way, if I double click, it grabs the entire thing. If I just click on one, it'll only grab that. I can also click on the outside and only grab that one piece, or double click on the outside and it grabs just the outside. But if I double click on the inside, it grabs the entirety of it. Okay. So that's the select tool. It just generally lets you move things around. Okay. So it's the same as in Photoshop or Illustrator or any of the other ones. The direct select tool, or what they call it here, sub selection tool, which is A, which would be like direct selection tool or whatever in other ones. What that allow you to do is actually grab these as though they're the Bezier points and curves as you normally would. So it means you can grab these handles and you can move around these points like you would expect. If I, it works much more similar to Illustrator or InDesign or other vector-based programs. Okay, so that's what this tool does. If you hold Alt, it'll let you do just one handle, just so you can see that. Okay, but that's what this does. So if you're trying to manipulate points and you want to do it this way, you can do it this way as well. Usually I just use the selection tool. This one's the transform tool, or the free transform tool. They also have the gradient transform tool. Don't worry about that for now. Basically, it kind of does what the selection tool does, but it gives you a little bit more options. So you can see I can kind of like shear, and I can kind of scale and rotate. And if I hold Control, I can wiggle waggle one specific area. Because you'll notice when I have the selection tool, I don't get those options. I don't have those handles. This free transform is like the free transform of other ones. So I'm holding Control. It would be Command if you're on a Mac, by the way. So just if I say Control, just realize I mean Command on Mac. But it'll let me, so I'm holding Control to do these, will allow me to basically adjust these as a whole that you would expect. Okay. So that's what that does. The transform tool does this. So let's say I click on this and I have, or the gradient tool. Let's say I have a gradient. If I select the inside here and I go to the gradient tool, this allows me to basically change where the gradient is and the shape of it and that sort of stuff. Okay, so that's what that does. This gradient tool. Hit V, click on this. I'm just gonna go back to a solid color. Oh, not that one. Sorry. In here. Let's just choose red. Okay. So that's what that does. The lasso tool does what you think the lasso tool does. You can draw around a piece, and then you can see you can actually pull that piece off. And it actually cuts it right out immediately. All right. There's also the polygonal one, which basically you click, and then you double click to end your selection. So boom, 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 double click, and then I get that piece and I can pull it off. All right, and the last one is the magic wand, which will grab alike areas, which isn't really all that useful in here. So the pen tool works like the pen tool in other programs. You can see we also have the add anchor, delete anchor, and the convert. Basically, I can choose the line here, the stroke color, so we'll just keep it black, and I'll choose Oh, it doesn't give me an option. Okay. Drawing. Okay. And what that'll allow me to do is like click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. So you can see I'm drawing my lines here. And then when I get to the last one, see how it hovers over it? It makes a circle. That means it's going to complete the shape. And then I've drawn a shape using the pen tool, okay? So if you're used to other programs use vectors, you're really probably familiar with the pen tool. Add anchor obviously adds points, okay? And the delete anchor obviously removes points. And then you have the convert, which basically allows you to take, like, let's see how this is a hard edge. I can click and drag. Or if I click, it'll turn into a hard. See, click. But if I click and drag, oops, let's try it again. Click and drag, it'll turn, you know, I can stretch out the Bezier handles. Type tool, you guessed it, makes type. And you have your settings in here, okay? Which is super exciting. The line tool, you guessed it, it draws a line. Which then, I mean, you could take it and you can do things with it. These draw shapes. So you have the rectangle tool, you have this oval tool, and then you have a poly star tool. And so those are your options here. So they all do the kind of the same thing, just different shapes. What I do want to show you is this though. So let's say I have this rectangle tool. If I click and draw it, it looks like this. And you'll notice when I select it, so when you click on it, you can grab the pieces of it. I can manipulate it like this, right? Also what that means is if I draw another shape over top of it, watch what happens when I grab it. It actually cuts that out of it, okay? And now this becomes other pieces. Oops. Now, that may or may not be desirable, because sometimes what ends up happening is you take something, you put over top of it. If I click off, click back on, see now it's gone. I like that feature because you can actually make cool shapes by what we would call booleans, but that might not be something that you're into. If you want to have it that when you draw, they're just shapes like straight up, you use the rectangle primitive tool. And what will happen is that it draws it, and then what you'll notice is if I pull this off, it doesn't, wherever it overlaps, doesn't cut out of the previous thing, okay? But it does have some limits because I can't really do anything other than your basic transform, or, well, I can do this, but I can't do anything but like my basic. I can't even hold like control and stretch it or anything. I can just do basic things that you can do. So it's not as dynamic, but you don't have to worry about things getting caught up in each other. Pencil tool draws like a pencil, okay? So you draw just like the pencil tool and other ones. The paintbrush tool, what's this one? The paintbrush tool, this does kind of the same thing, but what you'll notice is that the pencil tool draws a stroke, meaning that there's no thickness to it. Literally just draws a line, okay? Now, if I use the paintbrush here, and if I can grab my Wacom, what you'll see is that, well, this one doesn't have it. Let me see. Let's do this one. There we go. If I don't have pressure on. Hang on a second. Let's see. Brush size. Here we go. Use pressure. This, if I push harder, makes it thicker, and lighter makes it lighter. And actually what the paintbrush tool does is it doesn't draw a stroke. It actually draws a fill, which is the same thing as the inside of these shapes are fills, the outside are strokes. So you can actually stretch these out and make them the shapes. But more than that, it allows me to have thickness and thinness of line, especially if you're using a Wacom. You'll notice there is no thin and thick of this. I can't stretch this out. I can pull this line and I can sway it around, but I can't, there's no thick or thin, okay? Because it draws a stroke, the pencil. The brush draws technically a fill, which allows to have the thickness and thinness of line, all right? The bone tool we're not really going to use. Basically allows you to put, I'm surprised they put that back in. They had taken that out for a while. It allows you to basically put joints in stuff. And then you can, manipulate those. And you can, do kind of neat things. Let's see, like this. Basically, it gives you kind of a pseudo skeleton underneath, which is neat. And then we also have the bind tool, but we're not going to worry about that. The paint bucket, basically what that'll do is it will replace the color of, hang on a second, let's go V, let's click off of that guy, there we go. Go to paint bucket, I can choose a different color, let's say this color, click on there, and it changes the color of fills, okay? But it does not work on strokes. This one is the ink bottle tool. It does the same thing, but for strokes. So I click on this. Let me just change. Right now it's on black. I click on this, and it will change the stroke color. Probably should have done the same color, but it will paint strokes, which is the outside lines. Okay. Eyedropper will just sample colors. Oops. So basically, if I have the eyedropper tool, I can click on that, and then it will sample that color and give me that color back. Eraser, if you guessed, which I'm assuming you probably did, it erases things, right? So I can go in here and erase bits. Yay. What's this one? The width tool? Never used that before. I don't use the camera tool either. The hand tool allows me to grab like this, but you can also just hit spacebar with any tool, and that allows you to move. This is the zoom in and out. So you hold Alt to click out, and then don't hold Alt to click in. I don't usually use that either. I just use Control plus and minus, okay? Or Command plus and minus, depending on. This is the current settings of whatever you have. So let's say I have a shape here. I'm just going to go to the rectangle one here. I can choose my stroke here, and I can choose my fill here, and then that will be the setting of what gets drawn, okay? That's the basics of what these are. And then usually tool settings are down here. You can also see in properties, it'll give me more options. So some of them have more or less. So if I use this brush here, which it's actually getting kind of cut off, I could select this, and this means use pressure. So if I have a Wacom tablet, it'll actually allow me to have pressure on it. This one here actually lets you draw in front or behind. So like if you look, paint fills, what that means is that it will only, so I got that, so it will only it'll draw inside of it, but does not affect the lines, okay? If I don't have that on, oops, not this one, sorry. If I don't have that one on, if I just do paint normal, you can see it actually, I don't know if you could tell, but it's actually cutting into the line when it didn't when I had the other. There's also paint behind, which means it will not paint. It'll only paint behind objects, which is kind of neat. There's paint selection, paint inside, which means it'll only paint inside. Well, that seems to kind of do the same thing. I usually just leave on paint normal, and then we have brush size, and you can change the brush size here. So you can go bigger or smaller. You can also use your brackets next to the P key, so to make it bigger and smaller. One thing I do want to draw attention to is that watch. See how big that brush size is? Watch as I go back. Control minus minus. Oh, looks like okay. There's an option, which they don't have it on here, to have it stay the same size. Brush tip, use the thing, and then also use tilt, which basically means that depending on how I have my thing tilted, my Wacom, it will affect the way the line is drawn. So that's the basic tools over here that you can use, all right? And the properties give you generally the properties of such. If I go over here, I can select different objects, and it gives me the properties of each one of those objects. So I could like select this little bit here, and then I can just go ahead and change the color of that to blue, okay? Or I could select this piece, and I could change the stroke thickness, okay? I could select this fill and be like, I want a different fill color, and I could do this. It'll give me the properties of whatever I select on here, all right? Now, that is that. I'm just going to click and drag and delete the whole apparatus here. And I'm going to right click, and we are going to delete this layer. So you can see I have layer 1. Trying to think of anything else that'd be... We also have the library. So you might want to bring in elements into here in order to work. So you would just do, File, Import to Stage, and you can select anything in here. So I could select this, and it brings it to stage. I can delete it here, but it's always available on this. Once I've imported it, it's already been linked in, okay? But that's the basic of these. And then we have the timeline here. But when we get into that, I'll show you how to animate stuff. But that's the basic tools, all right? And I'm just going to delete this. There we go. I'm just going to delete it actually out of the stage and all that too. There's a really rough overview. And the next thing, I'll show you how to just draw something.